This whole question of alignment of it, and if alignment are the universal value that we can align it to.
Yeah, I can't talk about that. Yeah.
I have a feeling you will not. I do.
I can only talk about things that interest me, unfortunately. And it is an interesting, topic, but you should save that for like a serious class. Not my classes. An instructor who's a bit more serious, a bit more organized. Louis, nice hair. So
the idea of values.
The idea of values?
The idea of universal values. Nothing.
Nah.
I do agree.
Yeah, that doesn't really do much for me either. Anyone else? Yeah.
So I work with kids, and it came up on Friday. Like we just sort of hit on a meaning of the class. One does with kids, and me and a couple of my colleagues were asking them a little bit jokingly, but a little bit seriously, like why did they get out of bed in the morning if they didn't have because they were like, because my parents make me, and I was like, well, technically you don't have to, but and they said, and I quote, I believe they get out of bed due to recess and dessert. How do you feel about that?
Well, you're really, what are the ages of these kids?
First and second grade.
So you're talking about like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a couple of things. The psychology of a child, and then the rigidity of academia. I don't know if the two mix well together, because when you're young, you just want to go out there and just break things. The idea of sitting for a few hours is not fun. The idea of listening is not fun, especially to things you don't care about. We experience that as adults, and some of you are here just really for 3 units and a passing grade so you can kind of move on. And the idea of you just sitting here and listening to me ramble on about things you don't really care for. Maybe once in a while you listen, and once in a while you're excited and inspired, but for the most part you just don't care. And so it's just the system itself creates a good amount of injustice. But, good morning. But it does help with the kids being a bit more social in a culture that's just pushing people towards isolation and loneliness and depression. So in that sense, it's good. They do create friendships, but it also depends on the school. It depends on the teachers. Good morning. Yeah. But anything that's not fun is just unfun. Yeah. The other part of children really is why we have them. That is a good thing to talk about.
Sure.
You guys should not have them. This is not a climate or a culture or a time or an age to have children. You should just have companions and have a few flings and then get sick and die. Hopefully in your sleep. If you're lucky. But 85% of people really just end up in hospitals with tubes behind them, in front of them. So, yeah. So no children.
Why do you think we have them?
I'm sorry?
Why do you think we have them?
Well, the biological aspect. First of all, do you have any other questions or comments before we talk about this ridiculous thing that no one really cares for? Louis?
Where do babies come from? Why?
Where do babies come from, huh?
Why does that?
Maybe you and I should go outside for a few minutes. Anyone else? No? The babies can't be such an ass all the time. Now, well, we can't really talk about having children without first talking about sex. And we can't talk about sex without first exploring why there is this urge within. We've tried to inject a good amount of religiosity to the idea of sex. You can even find it in Genesis, the Old Testament, that, It's really mostly about procreation, but that in itself is a little vague because we create all the time, imaginatively, physically, emotionally, intellectually. And sex is just more than two bodies coming together and grinding against one another. Whenever there's a desire out there, and that desire goes inside you and just blossoms, you want intimacy with that desire, you want to touch it, you want to taste it. So we procreate all the time. So it really has to do with the definition and interpretation of sex and what it may or may not mean. It also depends when you have children. If you're 20 versus, when you're like Al Pacino or Robert De Niro, like close to death. Yeah.
Last week, you talked about grief. I asked about universal values. I don't want to come back to it, but you talked about grief. I was surprised because I was expecting you to talk about don't kill. That's actually not that. It's grief. That's universal. You seem to imply that grief was one of the isn't the opposite of grief, which would be creation of life instead of the disappearance of life. Something universal that we all somehow want.
Well, the thing with grief is that it's something I think we talked about some weeks ago, maybe in this class or maybe not.
Just a little bit.
I don't really know how you guys feel about me, but imagine for a moment that my dean was to come to class on Wednesday, and some of you may raise your hand and ask, so where is Amir? And he says, I'm sorry to tell you, that's the reason I came here, he's dead. Now, if you have found the class to be interesting, and if you have found me to be likable a little bit, then there's a good chance that you may be saddened a little. Some of you may walk out and drop the class. Some of you may shed a couple of tears, and some of you may say, thank God, the universe has too many of these, idiots around, want less of them. Now, you're not going to experience grief over things that you don't care for. If, for example, you and I had just met, and the following class meeting, I'm no longer here, well, you're going to say, oh, well, sad, I'm sorry he passed away. Did he have a wife? Did he have children? Was he sick? How did he die? I mean, it just questions out of curiosity. If, on the other hand, it's the last day of the semester, for example, and all of a sudden the dean comes and says he's dead, you may not really much care for me, but you may care about your grade. And so you're going to say, well, who's going to grade? Who's going to read my last essay? I spoke to him just before he passed. I told him that I've missed a lot of assignments. If I could submit them, is a new instructor going to accept them? So you have another set of concerns. If, on the other hand, you signed up for this class because you wanted some units, a grade to transfer, but that particular passion morphed into something else. You actually became very interested and curious and passionate about the ideas you were talking about in the class. And you usually don't like the ideas. What you usually like is the person who expresses the ideas. So you have a relationship with the ideas, but because the ideas are connected to me, you have a relationship with me now. And the more intense, the more intimate that relationship, should I not be around, that's going to impact you a bit more. So the first thing you need to understand about grief is that without having an intimate relationship, that determines the degree to which you will be sad and sorrowful and suffer from paralysis of emotions, paralysis of mental activities. It's kind of like a trauma. Some traumas are sudden, some traumas take time, some traumas are short-lived, some traumas take a long, long time. But most traumas, if not all of them, initially begin with just being negative. When time passes and you have suffered enough and you're just overwhelmed and tired, you don't want to feel those things anymore. You kind of walk away from the whole thing. You begin for the first time to really study them, the experiences. And then what used to be a very negative experience all of a sudden becomes this toolbox that every time you open and you study some more, observe some more, learn some more, apply some more, it becomes a tool for, insight, wisdom, and all that. It's kind of like going to AA and you realize the guy or the gal who is in charge of guiding and directing, 20, 30 people's minds and psyches and emotions. They themselves used to be alcoholic for many, many, many decades. They lost their wife, their husbands, their kids, their house, their job, their health. And now, they recovered. Now they're there telling them, I know why you're afraid. I know why you're confused. I know why you're angry. I know why you're enraged. I know why you drink. I know the trauma. I know this. I know that. So let me tell you how this works. And the only reason why you have such a wise human being guiding 20, 30 people is because they were addicted. That's one kind of paralysis. Then they really, for the first time, and it's not like they never tried to recover, they did, but they failed. All of a sudden, magic happens, and they try to kind of give this another shot to rehab, and this time it works. But now they suffer from depression. They can no longer drink, and it's something intellectual, physical, emotional. They can no longer hang out with the friends. They can no longer frequent the bars they used to go to, the things they used to do. And so that creates a good amount of isolation, loneliness. It's a divorce from all the things that you knew. And all of a sudden, kind of like the story of Job in the Old Testament, out of the ashes of life, something about you happens. Something about you just comes up and says, no, this is fine. I can do this. You read books, you have a support group. They'll take care of you. And then one morning, you pass by a bar and you just look at it and you feel bad for the people in there. You kind of feel bad for all the years you spent time there. But you have no desire to consume any alcohol. So there was a woman, I'm not really quite sure where this conversation is going, but nevertheless, there was a woman, she was German, very, very young, kind of like Mother Teresa. For those of you who may not know her story, she was about 15. She goes to Calcutta, India, and she comes to realize that she really enjoys the country. She likes the people very much. Why, how, who the hell knows?
Teresa.
Yeah. And she writes some letters to the Pope asking him if she could basically just plant herself in India, in Calcutta, and help people. Initially, she's told no, but after some time, he agrees, and she's just there. And near the end of her life, she has this like wrestling match with God on a daily basis. She doesn't want to help people. She's disgusted by people. She doesn't like poverty. She doesn't like just being around dirty things. But it's something that she had been doing, and so she couldn't walk away from it. But Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, very much like Mother Teresa, had a similar experience that she became very interested about. Why is it that people become sad, sorrowful, to the point of paralysis? Forgive me, for some of us in this class who have some age and experience, and those experiences haven't always been very pleasant. You live your life, and you have some bumps. Whether it's hanging out with lousy friends, whether smoking, drinking, or whatever the case may be, just having fun with life. At the same time, it comes with a cost, which is you lose time, you lose health, you lose youth. And I don't know how it happens, but I think psychologically something kicks in. It's like slaps you in the face and says, what are you doing? What have you been doing? And you're forced to reflect. You're forced to look back. And looking back is like looking yourself in the mirror. And you see a horror show. What you categorize as pleasure, as fun, as entertainment, they're no longer fun. They're no longer pleasurable. They become a source of misery and suffering and pain. And you don't like what you see. It's like that movie, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, who's the prettiest of them all. And this time what the mirror tells you is, you're not really pretty, you're actually quite ugly. You know, your entire life is like a horror show. And kind of like, again, you know, like Leo Tolstoy, you say, no, no, that can't be. I like myself. My life hasn't been all that bad. But this time around, you can't really self-deceive. And as the mirror shows you more of the horror show of your life, all of a sudden you realize, as your friends call, you just look at the screen of your cell phone but don't pick up. You're beginning to lose interest, including your appetite goes away. You don't open the blinds, you turn on the TV, but you just go through the channels very, very quickly. And there is no stability to you. Nothing survives for too long. Everything you touch kind of decays and dies. And then you get really, really depressed. Now, one of the things that Kubler-Ross experienced with people who are dying, with people who are sick and dying, with people who get old and slowly are decaying and dying, is that they deny. They deny the reality of their condition. You know, you look yourself in the mirror and you realize that, you know, more wrinkles are being added to your face, but you say, no, 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 no. You know, I'll go to, I don't know, Walmart and get some oil of Olay or something. And you're trying to do what you used to do when you were 20, just to remain relevant, just to imagine that you're still young. And it doesn't matter how much you try to deny and overlook certain realities and facts of your life. Eventually, at a certain point, you say, no, I am 60. I am 40. I am 35 and I have to start school from scratch. And these are not things that come to you easily. You don't accept them. So the first thing that, the first stage of grief is that you deny. You can't accept. Because to accept something, to see something that is a horror show, really, for the most part, kind of makes you sad. You know, it's like you realize that you have to walk away from your relationship. You know, but you say, no, it's too much. I've been with this man or this woman for like 2 years or 2 months or 2 weeks or 2 hours. It's too much. And so you try to go out and have candlelight dinners, and go on a cruise, but it just doesn't work. Once you realize you can no longer deny, the second stage sets in, which is you can no longer have power. I mean, one of the nice things about being able to deny, you know, certain realities of life is that you will assume power. You can continue thinking that you have power over things. You know, some of you haven't turned in assignments. Some of you don't go on the module to kind of listen to the audios. And I have access to everything, you know. And you say, oh, no, I'll do it, you know, the last day of class or last week of the class or last few months of the class. And you keep denying that, you know, you're losing time. And it's very difficult to kind of listen to 5 hours of stuff and then write a relatively decent essay. Because it takes time to be able to kind of gather your thoughts and emotions and think well and reflect well, and then be able to write them down in a very coherent, mature way. And once you realize that you're short in time and, you know, your plate is already full with work and 5 kids and, you know, whatever, all of a sudden you become angry. And that's the second stage. Once you can no longer deny, and you have to some extent, kind of face realities of your life, you realize that you have no power over those things, and you become very, 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 very angry. Now, some of us in this class who have a checkered past or a history of some unresolved issues, and there's nothing wrong with them, and that's how things are. Initially, you say, no, I can get rid of them by drinking, by smoking, by music, by being an artist, by taking classes, by having a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or going to the boxing ring, whatever the case may be. You know, you can entertain yourself with those things until you realize it doesn't matter what door you knock, your issues are not going to go away. You can't hide from them. You know, they kind of come and chase you. And you become very, very angry. And you say, well, why didn't I do this 5 hours ago? Why didn't I, you know, talk to my father about A, B, C, D? Now, the problem with anger, and this is not a just anger. This is not an anger where there is discipline in it. It's raw. You know, it's kind of like our good friend in the back who works with kids. They're just raw. They just want to go out and play and break things. Now, anger takes away a good amount of power from you, as well as giving you a good amount of power. Power over other people. They're very afraid of you. And you actually assume that you're fully justified in having this particular power, this anger. The problem with denial and then anger is that it really messes you up in so many different ways. What little stability you had in life, anger just destroys the whole thing. And that's the second stage of grief. Once you've done expressing your anger, and I'm not quite sure again how this happens, there are no timetables really. Everybody has their own timetable to work with. It may be that I go and seek a therapist and I am okay after 2 weeks. Your situation may be 2 years or 20 years, no one knows. And there is no how to. And don't ever allow anyone to deceive you, con you into telling you that if you do A, B, C, D 5 months or 5 weeks or 5 minutes later, you'll be fine. It doesn't work that way. Always go back to this wonderful, insightful, wise verse in the New Testament that you can make the grass grow by pulling it. In his Bodhi, Abi, good morning. How are you? I see your mom has not made you soup. Hello, Abi. There is this verse by Omar Khayyam. Omar Khayyam is not a Sunni Muslim, but a Shia. A city in Iran. He had a very dark and gloomy temperament, and he had this unfortunate personality of sitting back, observing, reflecting, and then writing his ideas and discoveries down in poetry. One of the best lines that you will ever find, if any of you are too interested. There are some translations of his poems, but by people who don't speak Persian. So, if you want to learn Omar Khayyam, come to my office, and I'll teach it to you. But wait, no, I missed out. Yeah, don't come to my office. I won't teach it to you. پاک از عدم آمدیم و ناپاک شدیم آسوده برآمدیم و غمناک شدیم. That we came into life pure and clean, having the capacity to have lots of fun, to be entertained by all sorts of things. And then little by little, they became civilized by the adult world. You go to school, you learn language, you watch Taylor Swift, Miley Cyrus, Snoop Dogg, and what little purity was inside you are stolen by the world of advertisement. آسوده برآمدیم. Comfort, rest, solace. That's how we came, and we leave sorrowfully, with regret and remorse. So for those of you who want to know how your life was, very clean. How you are, unclean. You were once very comfortable, and you will die with a good amount of regret. See? You don't even need to call 1-900 psychic. I have told you your past and your future. I'm sorry. See? She's sad. She's going to go somewhere cry. Now hello, buddy.
There's no way to die without sorrow. I can't.
Well, it really depends for the most part on how accepting you are of your life. Some temperaments and some lives, you go out with a fight. My father-in-law, Emmanuel, he had stage 4 cancer, and he wanted to cure this particular disease naturally and organically, you know. And so he would always refer to his wife and her magical potions, you know. There came a point where he couldn't walk, he couldn't eat, and he fought. He fought to the very, 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 very end. Just the last, perhaps, nanosecond just before he died. I suppose he died in peace. I wasn't there. We were called and we had to rush. But there are some people whose lives are just difficult, whose kids are difficult, whose spouse are difficult. And so it's really difficult for you to just die peacefully. Some people, despite all the difficulties, they're, for some strange reason, are able to just die very, very calmly and peacefully. They accept everything. So you can't know. Just wait until you get a little sicker. And when you're bedridden, I think the best prayer for anyone, young or old, is, I mean, if you believe in God or biology or monkeys, I don't really care, but you should pray for dying in your sleep. Or, you know, driving on the highway and being run over by a 18-wheeler. Just quick, you know. Are you okay?
Oh, yeah.
Of course. So after a good amount of anger and fighting, let me give it to you in a way that maybe you guys can maybe grasp in a different way. So let me tell you how your relationships are going to go. Okay?
Fine.
And none of you are exempt. Hello, buddy. You will go into relationships with so much joy, so much hope, so many beautiful dreams. These days, you don't have to wait very long for your dreams to be crushed. After 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, or minutes, or months, or years, you begin to see something that it's not really fun anymore. But you deny that. You say, no, no, no. I still love him or love her or whatever. We can make it work. So you deny certain realities. One of the awful things about arranged marriages, at least in the past, not so much now perhaps, is that once you get married, you stay married until you die. That's your ultimate release, you know. Yeah. But as the Prophet of Islam once remarked, there is nothing more holy than a marriage, and there is nothing more holy and just than a divorce. Now, you will deny that there are wrinkles in your relationship, that things are tough and difficult, and you don't really want to be there, but you push those realities away. You don't want to look at them because it's too much. You just got married, or you just are addicted to this person, and you have a life together. You just bought sofas and TVs and chairs. There comes a point where things become so bad that you can no longer deny them. And then you become angry. You become angry because you want to talk to this person, but they don't really want to listen. You're angry at your parents for putting you in the situation. You're angry with yourself for not thinking well, not reflecting well, not maybe examining, studying what a marriage is, how you should choose a companion. So you become angry at the whole thing, life. And then when you realize your anger is not going anywhere, really, what you do is you compromise. You look at your husband or your wife and you say, listen, you know I don't like you. And I know you don't like me. I don't want to divorce you. And I don't want to walk away from the relationship. When I make food, at least say thank you. When my parents come over, at least be hospitable. You make a little compromise, I'll make a little compromise. So you try to fix the denial mode by compromising. I don't like you as my instructor. I don't like the assignments. I don't like your voice. I don't like the way you look. I will come to class. Don't ask me to ask any questions. Don't look at me. Okay? There comes a point where you realize that the compromise even doesn't work. You just don't like this thing around. And then what happens? Denial didn't work, anger didn't work, compromise didn't work. Then you get sad. You're helpless. You get really, really depressed. He comes home, says, let's go out. You say, no. Talk to me. No. You want like, like lay next to him? No, I hate you. There is nothing about you that I like. And then you suffer a good amount of isolation. And then imagine you come from a culture where you can't divorce. It's too much shame to your parents, to your culture, to God. And then you say, okay, I guess I'm just going to move into the fifth and last stage of grief, which is, I accept. Now, if you happen to be religious, acceptance will be good. It will be easier because you say, God has mapped out my life and this is what God wants of me. I'm going to be patient. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to overlook all of the miseries in my life. If on the other hand, you don't believe in God, acceptance will be a little bit more difficult, a little more challenging. So remember, whenever you find yourself in a grieving mode, first you deny certain realities of life. When you can deny no more, you become angry for you being unintelligent, for making the wrong choices, making the wrong decisions, feeling the wrong things, thinking the wrong things, behaving the wrong ways. And then you begin to compromise. You go back to your companion, to your mom, to your dad, and say, I'm sorry, I will never do it again, hoping that you will once again find yourself in their good graces. Okay? You realize that that's not going to work, then you get really sad and depressed. You lock yourself in the room and you won't come out. You listen to sad music. The light is always turned off. And then, if you're lucky, before you die, you get to a place where you say, this is my life and I accept it because I can't make any changes. Remember, you're not going to go through the grieving mode if you're not intimate or close or are in a relationship with something. You have to be in a relationship. You have to be invested. You have to care. And then you have to be disappointed. Okay? Now, one of the things about grief and modernity is the following. At least in the Western world, our life, your life and my life, from the 3rd century all the way almost to the 16th century or so, life was not seen as an exercise towards happiness, fulfillment, contentment. Life was a veil of tears. You come down here and it's all blood, sweat, and toil. It's work. And it's not going to be a work that you like. This idea of following your dreams, become who you are, make sure your life is meaningful, that you're authentic, you're creative, these are brand new concepts. Money didn't come to us easy. Nothing was easy for us. Okay? The only salvation you had was a nice, peaceful death. And then you'd be judged by God. hopefully God will look at you and say, well, you're really quite awful, hell, or you're not bad, purgatory, or you're good, heaven. The moment Industrial Revolution took place, factories came about, cars came about, you have big cities, okay? And you have weed markets all over Oakland. You don't have to wait to die to be happy. You don't have to figure out if you have a soul when you die. What modernity now promises us is the following. You can be happy here and now. You can figure out who you are here and now. You can have a profoundly meaningful life. In fact, life owes you happiness. So for those of you who keep pursuing happiness and you fall short, remember, these concepts, authenticity, creativity, being all that you want to be and all that, happiness, justice, fairness, equality, diversity, accepting people for who and what they are, they're about 150 years old. That's it. Grace?
Yeah, I have thoughts on that. Because even, like, when I imagine time before 100 years ago, not life, yes, there was a fair amount of misery, and I think that it wouldn't be fair to those people to assume that they lived exclusively in misery and they would die. That doesn't feel accurate to the bare bones of human existence, which, you know, you work in the field in medieval Europe, you probably had some songs to go along with that.
You're right.
Songs. You found people didn't exist in little isolated windows and not talk to each other. And, you know, hell is other people, but happiness is other people as well. So
you're absolutely right. All I'm saying is that the version of happiness today is very different than the version of happiness 50 years ago. That's all.
okay.
This particular version sucks.
All right.
Good job. Yeah. I mean, the point I'm trying to make, you're not going to be happy. Yeah.
Couldn't meaning be found in the suffering?
I'm sorry?
Couldn't meaning be found in the suffering?
Well, it depends how you suffer. The idea of finding meaning in suffering, first of all, we're not the sort of organisms that enjoy pain. We don't like pain. You know, if on the other hand you happen to be Magnus Carlsen or Peter Duca, where you want to even become more perfect at the piano or playing chess, you will suffer. It's kind of like lifting weights. You know, the more muscles you kind of pull or break, new muscles are going to be replaced or you're going to be creating them. And so pain has a certain meaning. But when you keep breaking and hurting and being misery, but nothing good grows out of it, you know, then there is no meaning about that. The only meaning you have is just misery and suffering, prolonged. If on the other hand, you have come to realize that the more you go back in time, the more you reflect in your life about the father who's never been in your life, which brings about a good amount of negative emotions. At the same time, you can kind of take those negative emotions, unpack them, study what lives inside, you know, learn from them, and hopefully they'll make you a better father should you choose to be one.